SHESpeaks panel, which is entrepreneurial leadership leading from within, and we have some amazing panelists coming today. So we're happy to have you all here. My name is Alvarez. I'm the Senior Events and Programs intern for KSWALI and then the Student Board President-elect. But we have four amazing panelists joining us here today to talk about their entrepreneurial journey and how they lead from within. So we'll go ahead and get started. If everyone can introduce yourselves and how you came to be and what you do.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Ariel Lee. I actually graduated from the University of Texas Austin in 2020 with a degree in studio art and government. Yes! While I was here, I actually started my first company, which gave me a lot of just experience with founding something and the process from start to finish of launching a product. From there, went to work for Accenture's digital studio in DC, doing digital innovation for the government and creating products and programs from scratch. After that, I'm currently at Amazon, and I work within their environmental health and safety unit, creating products for them and innovating.
So you spoke on your entrepreneurial journey, and so I'd love to know how you merge your entrepreneurial journey with your work as a UX designer at Amazon right now.
Yeah, so as a UX designer at Amazon, I think like Amazon is just an innovative company in general. There's a focus on having a lot of ownership over the work that you do, as well as the results that you're driving towards your customers. And so as an entrepreneur outside of work, I think one of the things that you really focus on is finding opportunities through rapid iteration, as well as testing and doing market research. So I think as a UX designer at Amazon, one of the things that I bring to that is finding small ways to innovate through testing out things iteratively, as well as creating systems and tools that can help me just perform better where I see there are gaps.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Samantha Bryant. I also graduated from UT class of 2021, welcome. And I studied business honors in marketing in the Macomb School of Business while I was here at UT. I studied a couple of other things too. I minored in English and got a certificate in global management, which comes into play because now I'm working in book publishing, so I'm getting to use my business background and my English minor. So yes, you really can find a way to bring all the things you're interested in into one role. I currently work at Penguin Random House as the Associate Marketing Manager for a division called Knopf. So I work on adult fiction and nonfiction. Have been with Penguin Random House since I graduated in 2021 and with Knopf since this February.
And so, as Associate Marketing Manager, how do you navigate the ever-changing book or marketing field, and especially now in the digital age?
Ooh, I love this question. Because Steph knows it's definitely a ever-changing industry. Publishing is actually one of the oldest forms of media because we've had books for a very long time. So it's always changing and we're always finding new ways to adapt. I think one of the biggest ways that I stay in touch in how that the market is always changing is just being in touch with people who are on the forefront of those trends. So I spend arguably too much time on social media, getting an idea of what readers are talking about, how people are talking about books, how communities are coming together and building themselves around the books that they love, and really being able to go back to my team and find ways to engage in some of those conversations and amplify some of those conversations as organically happening.
Sheena?
Hi, my name is Sheena Wilde. I am the Senior Vice President of Philanthropy at Kendra. I oversee corporate philanthropy as well as the newly launched Kendra Foundation. I'm not a Longhorn, but I consider myself one, given that 4 years ago I was a big part of creating what you guys are sitting in, the Kendra Women's Entrepreneurial Leadership Institute, as it's a foundational program that we run and oversee under the foundation. I went to college a long time ago, not in 2020, but I am a graduate of Seattle University. It's a small Jesuit university in Seattle. Majored in journalism and mass communications. Thought that I was going to go into broadcast journalism. Really loved being on air. Used to do some stuff for like Fox Sports and some other networks, thought I was going to then move into sports journalism, and then actually found the start of my career working in digital advertising. So believe it or not, you couldn't find everything on your phone on Google always. So my career really started working for a Google affiliate, how to help small and medium-sized businesses be found on the internet. I was fascinated by the way in which you could service people to help their businesses, and I learned that really quickly on, and then continued to scale my interest in the digital space, moved to Hilton Hotels, helping ramp up their e-commerce department for a while, and then landed at Facebook. Here actually in Austin, I managed Fortune 500 clients in travel, in dating apps, which was not what dating apps are now. I think like, it was like something fish and some other random site, not what they have now. It's very interesting. And then ultimately had a pivotal point in my career where I wanted to go nonprofit and found myself 10 years ago now at Kendra Scott.
I'm happy to have you here. And so, could you elaborate more on the initiatives that the Kendra Scott Foundation does to empower women and youth?
Yes, so, Kendra started the business on the 4 pillars of family, fashion, and philanthropy when she launched the business 22 years ago. So the unique part about our brand is we're not trying to catch up to how social impact is integrated into business. And so I've really been able to lean into understanding who our consumer is, understanding who our employees are and our founder and what they're passionate about. And after years of evaluation of data and who we've seen, we really came to the focus being on women and youth, primarily within the health, wellness, and education space. It allows us to stay focused, but it also allows us to have a full breadth of ways that we can really integrate philanthropy by using our time, talent, and treasure. The foundation has a little bit more specified programs. I can go into that later, but they're all rooted in really serving women and youth to ensure they can live their brightest, healthiest, and most empowered lives.
Steph?
I'm Steph Wagner. I'm the National Director of Women in Wealth at Northern Trust, and I will just say personally, my biggest passion is the economic empowerment of women. And it's so amazing to see these young women in the room that are just, it's like, wow, and this is such a treat. I can't even tell you, because most of the time I'm working with and really helping our firm make an impact with older women. And so to give back and be here in this room is amazing. My journey started very different. One of the things I'm so amazed at this panel is our diverse backgrounds. I actually, don't hold it against me, but I'm a Trojan. I went to USC. Except we got here in the mid-90s. My kids bleed at burnt orange. And I probably am the longest season ticket holder in this room. Just because of my age. But anyways, I started my career actually in investment banking. And I then went into private equity when private equity looked completely different than it does today. This was in the mid-90s. And this is a big part of my journey is one day I was asked to board a Cessna to go look at a deal in Alabama. I had a 2-year-old at home. I was pregnant, and my husband traveled 150 nights a year. And something had to give. And I didn't have a mentor to talk to. There weren't a lot of women in private equity. There weren't a lot of women, there aren't enough today. There's certainly, I think I was the only, frankly, woman I knew in that field. And I quit. And I never expected to leave my career for as long as I did, but life happened. And 14 years later, I found myself in a very pivotal moment, facing divorce, and recognizing that I had lost not only I had lost complete agency over my financial life. And I will just share, if I can, that no one wakes up, none of you will ever just wake up and say, I think I'll lose my financial independence today. It just happens over time. And I first left my career, but then busy in my day-to-day, I leaned out of my financial life until I had no choice but to rebuild, to take care of these 3 little boys. And to also make sure I had to use my story and use my expertise as a former, vice president of a private equity fund to go make an impact. And that really led me to the wealth management. I became an entrepreneur though. I became an entrepreneur not by desire, but by need. because I had to re-enter after 14 years of leaning out and no one was gonna hire me. And it was an amazing journey of learning entrepreneurship, being a founder, creating 2 businesses, and then wanting to do something bigger than me and wanting to go be part of an organization where I could have the opportunity to become an entrepreneur. But I will just tell you, full disclosure, that my experience in corporate America is very short. You know, it started, private equity is in corporate America. But being at Northern Trust, which is one of the largest financial institutions in the world, is. And so I'm excited to talk about the topic because it is all about, creating something that is unique within a large organization. I will just add that in my role real quick, I lead our advisory practice for women nationally. We have over 54 markets across the country. We're a global organization. But I also lead, and we've partnered so much with Sheena and Kendra Scott, our Elevating Women platform, which is all about community, inspiration, and education centered around the economic empowerment of women. So,
Well,
and it's a little longer because I'm older.
Well, I mean, I look around. You're wiser than we are. That's what it is.
Thank you. Well, here's you have such a diverse background too, from private equity to founding your own business to now being at Northern Trust. So kind of like Errol, can you talk about merging the entrepreneurial skill sets with now becoming an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I think I will share that because of my personal journey, that I became very centered around the importance of authenticity, vulnerability, and maybe doing helping the financial services industry be more relatable to the average person, fair? Because there's always a little bit of intimidation factor. And so, I think being an entrepreneur, really being in seeing and also being, frankly, my client, if that makes sense. Like, it was me, I've been in their shoes. The importance of really bringing that authenticity, that vulnerability, the realness, and pushing an organization to start thinking differently. But it was centered around my personal experience.
Okay, so I know as myself and probably most of y'all that it was a little tough finding your right path in college, and even after college, like the thought of finding your right path might be scary. So I know all of y'all can talk about how you navigated finding your right path whether in college or afterwards, and specifically what were some skill sets that you learned to find that way. So Sheena, if you could start us off.
Yeah, so I'm sure we're all gonna have different answers here, but everything that I do is rooted in purpose. And so I always believe that once you can identify what your personal purpose is, it really will define what you choose to do with your career and where you choose your time to spend it, specifically because you spend more time with the people you work with than you actually do with your loved ones. And for me, my purpose was really to continuously be there to support my family. I have 3 kids, twin girls and my son, and been married to my husband for going on 11 years right now. And there was a time when I was at Facebook where I decided that I wanted to really focus on my family, but I specifically identified that moment to restructure what my purpose was because my mom passed away. So my mom passed away from a long struggle with alcoholism as well as MS, which ultimately led to the demise of kind of like her lifestyle and structure and how she ultimately passed away. And so that was when I gave up my career at Facebook, and it wasn't because I didn't think that I couldn't continue to accelerate along that path, but it was because my purpose had changed, and I decided that I wanted to find a way to give back to the people that I might be able to take my experience and give back to others. And Facebook wasn't serving that personal purpose for me anymore. I was becoming a mom. I was really wanting to find that, and so I thought I was going to get into nonprofit. I started volunteering within the MS Society. I thought that's where I wanted to start, given that was a disease that took my mom's life and there wasn't a cure. But what I quickly found is I was still hungry to merge my business skill set. So really those years of experience of what I was building within, managing clients and sales transactions and things like that at Facebook and Hilton, I wanted to apply all of those skills, which is ultimately why I chose to go work in an organization that is a for-profit organization doing nonprofit work. Now, I recognize I'm kind of a unicorn, but I do believe in trailblazing more for-profit organizations to look at the work that we're doing from the nonprofit perspective, to really think more. But again, journey for me was really rooted in defining my purpose. And I talk about that a lot to a lot of students, because you think you might want to go one way, your purpose changes. You might be this age, and next year my purpose might change again due to life experiences, but that's essentially what's kind of defined the path that I'm in now.
I really love that. I think that once you have defined your purpose, as you said, Sheena, it's also important to experiment and do.
Sure.
One of the things that I've done throughout my career, and also when I was a student, was I remember when I was younger, my dad had me like write out this like life manifesto, like 5-year plan. And at the time I was like, what do you mean? But I think like kind of as she said, like defining that purpose allowed for me to understand the things that I did and I did not want for my life as I envisioned it far out into that future. And so even when I was in college, I got into that practice of re-envisioning my 5-year, 3-year plan, but also acting upon that plan and testing out the hypothesis that I had. And so I would do things like pursue internships. There was a time in which, as I was a studio art major, and everybody says, what are you gonna do with that art major? I was like, well, let's figure that out. So I thought maybe I'll go into marketing or graphic design or some sort of social thing. But at the time, they didn't have a lot of internships. No problem. What I did was I emailed every single social media agency, advertisement firm, made a little portfolio for myself and pitched myself to them, and eventually found a spot at a social media marketing place that also paid me. And so through that, I was able to see, did I want to become a social media marketer? It's like, maybe that's not exactly it, but I'm gonna pivot. I thought I wanted to become a lawyer, so I decided to work in the House of Representatives. I ended up working for House Representative selling in Israel, and that allowed for me to see, ooh, this is a different, like working with law and the legal system is different. And so then I pivoted. So I think allowing for myself to test out my hypotheses as well as wear different hats and fail fast has allowed for me to define my purpose, and almost like an artist with a chisel, chipping away at that sculpture, get more refined over time.
I also think it's important to find your purpose and experiment with purpose, but I think I really found out how to make that practical and the way that it was described to me in college is there's the 3 circles that you're looking at: your purpose, your passion, and profit. So purpose is like, what are you good at? What can you do? What fills your cup? Passion is like, what do you just like doing? What do you find joy in? And then profit is, what can you make money doing? Because as much as we love having passion jobs, I'm fortunate to work in an industry that is very passion driven. You also will have bills to pay when you graduate from college, and you will have to find a way to actually pay those bills. So I think as you go through your collegiate career, really thinking about the intersection of those 3 and like taking the time to reflect of what am I passionate about, what do I find purpose from, and what are the skills that I have that are profitable. Like for me, I loved marketing, and I could have marketed consumer products goods. I loved connecting with consumers. I loved finding an audience, but I also loved reading. I loved books. I loved getting to talk about books and be part of a book club and share my thoughts with my roommates and people online. So finding the way that that came together was publishing, because that was an industry that was and is profitable, and allowed me to bring those 2 together into a career that I now have and love. So I think really kind of finding the way to make that very clear can be really helpful too, for bringing everything into focus.
You know, I have such a unique perspective because as adult, I think, the wiser of it. I have a 27, a 25, and a 20-year-old. And I often talk about this, what you're talking about. You are so inspiring, and you've given me so many good nuggets to go back and talk to them. But full disclosure, when I started my career out of, it was a much different time. Let's just be honest. And I got into finance because a lot of what you're talking about. I went accounting, hated it. What was missing? To your point, I'm very creative. but I'm also really analytical, and I'm a math person. Well, finance is creative, but most people don't think about it that way, but you're a problem solver. You've got to be creative. Accounting is more linear, fair? So that was, I didn't even realize I was doing it until, but what's interesting is when people say, well, why investment banking? I went into it for all the wrong reasons. I didn't have these talks, and this would be my advice to you all. I did it, full disclosure, for ego. I wanted to make a lot of money. I wanted to be on the cover of Forbes. I wanted to, frankly, I wasn't even, despite my story, I still kind of do, but, maybe not Forbes, but I'm working on it. But for different reasons, good reasons, better reasons, better intentions. How about that? But my point is that be true to who you are. Be true to what you want, because well, people always say, do you have regrets, especially given my journey? Do you wish you had, no, like regret means you take away all the lessons that you learned from that decision. So I don't believe in regrets. But what I am so grateful for, and my advice to you all, and my advice to my sons, who frankly I worry have all gone down this pressurized path of finance. And one is miserable. And I'm probably the only mom with 20-somethings going, quit! Who actually? And I'm happy to say Dylan's trying to get into the architecture program at UT because I keep saying, don't do what I did. You know, don't be true to what you're doing, who your values are, what speaks to you, and again, you know, I wouldn't explore the ego, the money. I also wanted to prove that I could go and dominate a man's world, you know, to be fair. So I'm very grateful for my journey because when I picked my second career, it was all around purpose. It was all around passion. And yes, I had a family to support as a single mom, so it definitely was about how do I monetize. So anyways, long-winded.
Well, just from hearing y'all stories, I feel like there's so much passion between what y'all did then and what y'all do now, and the evolution into your career now. And so I think sometimes we talk a lot about entrepreneurship so much, but we don't talk about intrapreneurship as well. So I'd love if y'all could talk about what is intrapreneurship to you, and how does that differ from entrepreneurship? And Ariel, if you would like to start it off.
Sure. So entrepreneurship to me versus entrepreneurship is being able to take a company's resources, community, or network, already sort of built out infrastructure, and innovate within that structure to create something that you're able to take a risk on or sort of own. It's about taking ownership over a piece of that versus entrepreneurship is you investing your own capital, building out your own resources, etc., which I think both of them have sort of advantages, disadvantages, but I would say those are the market differences for me.
Yeah, I mean, you know, from an entrepreneurship perspective, it's exactly what she just said. It's essentially operating like an entrepreneur, but within the walls of an organization. So
Which can be challenging.
yes, it can be challenging. I think that entrepreneurs are going to have the ability to operate within different infrastructures. If you're working for a startup, if you're working for an already established, you know, corporation. For me, entrepreneurship was really defining the white space that existed within the corporation, Kendra Scott, that I was within. It's the ability to really be able to see what is, you said, innovate, what is possible, really understanding what's working, maybe what's not working, and I'll tell you a little bit like kind of how I led on this like an entrepreneurship journey is when I came into the organization, my job was specifically to build out what is now our marketing and philanthropic managers. We have 32 of them all across the country, and they engage within the communities where we open stores. They essentially connect with businesses, nonprofits, and schools, invite them into our stores, host give back events, 20% of proceeds will come back to them. So I built up that program from the ground up, really figuring out how to operationalize it, build processes. There was a moment where I was like, wait a second, we should be doing more giving back on a larger scale. This is what's essentially our guerrilla marketing tactics, how we're building this brand awareness. why are we not trying this on a larger scale? How do I go out and ask for an ability to have a $5,000 budget to maybe put some earrings online that give back to a charitable organization? We can market it, I can show the new customer acquisition, I can show them the ROI, I can show them all the kind of more operationalized business pieces like we were doing in the community. And it was something that they were willing to say, oh, this is actually like a really great idea. So I was able to test it. And then from there, it was like continuing to stay within that track and having the wherewithal to identify there's nobody leading philanthropy within this organization. If I can show you how this is going to be a good return on the business, can I have a shot at that? Here's my business plan. Here's the title that I want. Here's the team that I want to take over here with me. So it's essentially like building your own business built within the walls, but you have to also have that ability, like an entrepreneur does, to recognize what a solution is that you're solving that might not exist, and or how can you do it better. So that's kind of, you know, my take on what is defines, you know, an entrepreneur.
One thing that you just said that I think is so important to highlight is she was willing to do the work
Yes.
and to really have the job before she had the job, create the results, create the buy-in.
Well, and be the smartest person in the room. That was a huge skill for me. It's like, I didn't know anything about 501c3s, but when I sat in that room with Kendra and our CEO, Tom Nolan, I was the smartest person that you were ever gonna know, because I went out, I built a network, I learned, I read, I did articles, I did seminars, you name it, I was doing it. So that when they asked me a question, I was like, oh yeah, let me tell you. And if I didn't know, I'd fake it till I make it. I said, that's a great question, I will get right back to you.
Sorry, I mean, interrupt you. No, you're right, that's exactly my point. And that is truly what it takes to be an entrepreneur in a large organization, is the willingness to do that. I will just add, I couldn't agree with you more. To me, as, you know, again, Kendra Scott is an innovator as it is, fair? So you are,
She thrives on creating entrepreneurs within her organization.
so you can imagine that Sheena's been in my bank.
Yeah, it's not a Kendra Scott.
We are in one of the largest buildings in downtown Chicago. The history is we were founded in the early 1900s. It is absolutely the most beautiful building when you walk in. It's the most intimidating building when you walk in. We even have private dining rooms. I mean, it's granted, we definitely need a decorator. There's a lot of like very old looking paintings. Not my style. But anyways, my point is, innovating within that type of a corporate environment is very different.
Right.
And so I would add to what you're saying and say you're willing to be a disruptor. You're willing to go in and disrupt, but how you do it is the key. Because disrupting can be very, very destructive. Fair, but disrupting and innovating and being an entrepreneur and delivering it how you do it in an effective way makes all the difference in the world. I can unpack that later if you want, but anyways, I just wanted to highlight that.
Something that we can all take is innovate within your organization. That's the big key factor in this. And so I think similar to entrepreneurship, and entrepreneurs, you always have to face challenges and hardships that come with the nature of being in that role. And so if y'all could speak on a thing that you had to overcome and how you overcome it, and just kind of the ways that you went about it. So,
I can go first, because it is something I'm still overcoming and something I'm sure many of you will experience. I'm the youngest person on my team, and I think that is something that we don't talk about a lot in post-grad life. You graduate from college, you're in a room full of peers, you join a team, you have insights, you have things to give to this team. I'm also the youngest person on my team by almost 7 years. So sometimes whenever I have ideas, they're like, yeah, that's great, but you haven't been around the block enough times to know. Which is hard because you're like, no, I know what I'm talking about. I've built that expertise that Sheena was talking about, and being able to put that into work and be able to provide value, I think is a very real thing. I think that's been a challenge for my team, especially because I work with a lot of authors who have been in publishing and producing books literally longer than I have been alive. So me being able to give them direction and having them respect my authority can be very challenging at times. So I think to Sheena's point of in having that disruption is also establishing establishing yourself as an authority, so being able to back up what you say with evidence, being able to have insights that you can give, being able to, like I said, provide value. So if they have questions about something, you can give answers and solutions that they may never have thought of, because you're a younger generation who is in tune to different needs and different audiences, and that is so valuable, because we know Gen Z, millennials are people who are a huge consumer base and who are spending money and who are making purchasing decisions that are impacting their entire family. So being able to leverage that as the case for why you can rise to the challenge instead of that being something that is just a challenge, I think is super important, and something that I would encourage all of you to think about as you move into post-grad life.
I'm gonna add, just like from building on that, but then flipping to, you know, the struggles or the obstacles or whatnot. I think one of the challenges that I've heard a lot is like, that's a great idea, but not right now. Or, you know, when you're really trying to push forth what you think is right. I think one of my biggest challenges is I'm seen as a non-revenue driving channel. So like if you work in HR, if you work in technology, you are essentially a support system to the business, and you are affecting, like, you are considered like an expense to the company. You're looked at on that EBITDA line, right? You're not like driving the incremental revenue or driving the incrementality. And so for me, lots of times is like the challenge for me is trying to have to get prioritization for what projects I'm trying to push forth from all cross-functional partners, and recognizing that my priorities are not their priorities, and having to shift my communication to ensure that it resonates with all the different players in the company that I need to come together to help achieve something. Like I've been trying to push forward rounding up your change at the POS systems. Everybody, you guys have probably seen it. It's like exists all over, and I've been trying to explain for years, if we implement that, we are going to save costs that we are spending out our doors to charitable organizations. But they're like, well, that takes technology time. That takes such and such times. It doesn't drive revenue. And I'm like, it might not drive revenue, but it will do the following things. And
You're speaking
right, when I get in there and start speaking numbers, and I start speaking cost savings, and I start speaking like bottom line, then their ears perk up. Oh, you're gonna save bottom line dollars? Like, how are you gonna do that? So that is what I would say some of the challenges is. Great idea, not right now. Goes back to then being the smartest person in the room and being ready to then present the solutions on your case. And also having the wherewithal to accept that maybe the time isn't right now, but when the opportunity does present itself, you bet that I will be right back there and be ready. And that's what the foundation has done for me. I've been presenting the foundation for years. I was like, we're starting a foundation. 4 years ago, our board was like, no. And I'm like, great, I just spent a year of my life trying to launch this foundation, and I could have cried on the side of the road, and then I was like, no, I'm gonna flip all of this information and turn it into a really robust corporate philanthropy department. We're gonna test it all out, and then 4 years later, let's launch the foundation, and everything's already done. Did it suck in the moment? Yeah, but it ultimately came about. So that's a challenge that I think some people see, or I have seen and struggled with, being like a non-revenue competing role within an organization too.
So if I can, I'll piggyback on, I want to address something you said, because there is some actually really inspiring research on the younger generation and how you have an unbelievable opportunity to do that. One of my biggest challenges is most of our competitors out there in the financial services world see women in wealth as an initiative. And I'm sorry, but I'm not an initiative. I'm just not. And this one, who's become a very, very, very dear friend, who calls me her mentor, and I learn from her every day. One day I heard her speak, and she said, you know, philanthropy, again, I put it in my world, it is not an initiative, it's a business imperative. And so when I was facing this challenge internally of just having a few very senior leaders saying, we know what's happening in the world with women. We know we are in one of the most unbelievably exciting times where women are going to have $30 trillion in our hands by the end of this decade. We have 10 trillion today. So what is happening because of the founders, through inheritance, etc., we will own the economic power of this country. It's amazing, right? But most of us aren't prepared to handle it. And that's why this is a business imperative. We can teach. Northern can be part of that solution. And my point though is that how? How do I go and get resources? I don't have a budget to this day, you know? But what your point was, well, I do, but I have to go beg still. I have to bring really good ideas. And I have to show the bottom line.
Yeah.
Always, always, always stay close to the numbers.
Yeah.
That's my biggest advice, whether you have your own business, whether you're in your own family, you know, whether you are innovating within a corporate structure, stay close to the numbers, to your point. For me, I had to go prove, you know, and I had to be willing to be small, to say, all right, I've got these big dreams, to your point, on the foundation. I want to have, but no, Steph, go get 4 pilot lines. Go prove this. Go do a women's retreat for female founders, which we did in partnership with Sheena and Kendra, and go blow it out of the water, and get scrappy in how you're going to do it, because you got to be lean and you got to show results. And it's
Intrapreneur skill sets. Yes.
100%. 100%. No, I worked for a huge organization, and at this women's retreat, to set it up, I rented a U-Haul, and she flew a cowhide rug in her suitcase. I was like, wait, what? You put a rug in your suitcase? She's like, yeah, save the money. And I was like, okay. But the first one was in Austin, and I truly rented a U-Haul, took all the furniture for set design, and interviewed Kendra. It had to look pretty fair,
Yes.
and brought my furniture. And here the U-Haul. Y'all, I work for Northern Trust, but I knew it's all about the bottom line. And I was being a founder, being a good steward, and saying it's going to preserve the bottom line, it's going to build my case even more. So I had to just throw that story. Anyway, I'll get to that in a second, because I feel like it's part of the next question, but I do want to address at some point.
Yeah.
I want to make sure
I mean,
we don't have time.
y'all talked about innovation within your organization now, and like the resistance to change that, or resistance to the wall that people have put up within your organization against that innovation. And so can each of y'all talk about an example or experience of innovating in your role specifically? And Samantha, if you would like to start.
Oh, sure. Innovating within my role specifically. I think one of the clearest examples is a book that I'm really proud that I got to work on. For context, in marketing and publishing, a lot of my role is thinking about how I can either get the book in front of readers so that they want to read the book and help the author find the readers that want to read the book, or help readers find the authors that they love. So for context, that is what I do. So for one of the books that I was working on was with the New York Times bestselling author. We had to create, it was a novel that he'd been working on for a while. He was an established author, but this was really a far cry from his other books. So I really had to think about how are we going to create an innovative campaign. So a lot of what I did was grassroots outreach. We literally did a book drop in bars. There's a scene in a bar. We did a book drop. It got influencers in 10 or 15 cities across the state, shipped them copies of the book so that they could go and video to themselves, dropping the books in different bars and lounges and places that they regularly went to with their friends, talking about community, finding ways to connect with people in real time. And when I originally pitched the idea to my boss was like, there's no way that people are going to get on board with that. Like, we've never done something like that before. And I think to Sheena's point of that's not going to work, being able to prove to my team, okay, well, here's why this might be a really interesting strategy. And that really was something that we tested early in the campaign using early copies of the book. And that worked and allowed us to have that book be a New York Times bestseller because we built grassroots support and we had people really talking about the book in the communities and the spaces where it was. So I think sometimes starting small and being faithful with the little that you have so that you can prove that you will be faithful with the lot is really important just for even proof of concept and building that trust and getting to innovate a little bit.
Absolutely. I think being unorthodox in your approach can be so helpful.
Yes.
I remember in my first job doing government innovation, which I think a lot of times people don't really think innovation and government.
Just like innovation and finance.
Yeah. And so I remember we were looking to get one of our contracts renewed, and so we were trying to find an innovative way, and in consulting, a lot of times for context, you're pitching for your contracts and you're you're trying to get the government to say, I want you to solve my problems. And so every so often you'll have to renew that contract and tell them why they should continue working with you instead of going to someone else who might be more innovative or have better technology. And so we were trying to tell the story of all the work that a data scientists, developers, designers, and prototyping team had been doing to solve the problem for the part of the government that we were working on. And so at that time, I am a creative, I'm an artist, and so I said, why not create a comic book? We could use storytelling devices to sort of encapsulate and tell a really easy story. Because one of the things I've also found in really technical roles, sometimes it becomes really hard for really technical people to translate that speak to other stakeholders who might not care, and to Sheena's point, only want to know about that sort of bottom line of what am I getting and what am I investing in and why. And so basically what I did was I took the narrative form of a comic book, interviewed all of our data scientists, software developers, and designers to tell the story of the work that we've done to create the product and the outcome that we had. And I remember there was a meeting that I was in, and it was a little tense because at the time I was very new in my career. I had just graduated, and so basically they're asking for more budget and time to do this initiative. And the person that was in the DoD at the time was asking questions. He was like, "What is this comic book that we're trying to make right now? What is this?" And they were like, basically, "Oh, it's gonna sell this, it's gonna sell that." And so they told us that we didn't have any budget, and so I was super scrappy about it. And in less than a week and a half, I got it drawn. I told the story. And when we put it on the table, I remember the night that I was like cutting all of the papers and putting all the comic books together, and I was so nervous because they had the big meeting the next day. And I remember when they got back to me and said that they renewed that $1 million contract. Everybody loved this story, they understood the impact, it was really clear to them, but it was because they took the shot on that comic book that we were able to close the deal.
That's awesome. I love that you said too, like you were in your sitting down, like cutting the comic book, because that never goes away. That like ability to get scrappy, and I mean, I like a couple weeks ago, I was like pushing boxes through a mall for an event, and I got caught with security cameras, and they came down and asked me if I was stealing something. It was like 7 in the morning, and I was like, no, I'm just trying to push a box to the event, but my point in all of that is like, we're still,
Don't lose your grit.
don't lose your grit. I think that's huge. All those are amazing things about innovation, and I think, you guys have all, explained how you really utilized your skills and really utilized your voice to innovate within the organization and make sure you were heard, because that's, again, I'm proving that what you do works. I think, from my perspective, I'm constantly thinking about how to innovate philanthropy within the walls of Kendra Scott and solve solutions that are the right thing to do to make impact, but are also the right thing to do that's going to help with our business that our consumer understands. And quite often I struggle because I think everything is so important and the customer wants to know everything. But our marketing team is like, no, they don't want to know everything, Sheena. They just need to know a streamlined message of when they purchase this, what are they doing? And I'm like, they're doing this and blah, 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 blah. So we needed to find a solution of something we could easily articulate to the customer, which was going to be a program that they would really understand, but it would also meet the priorities of what we were trying to accomplish and grow within the Kendra Scott Foundation. So just this last year, we launched this amazing new program. It's called Little Yellow Libraries. It's a program I've been dreaming of for multiple years. We do a lot of work within the education system, primarily serving Title I elementary schools, helping get access to things. So we do a lot of enrichment access through reading and through sports and through art. And we were also working with this nonprofit partner called First Book. First Book provides books to Title I schools, and they can purchase these books for their classrooms at like a fraction of the cost. So we had like thousands of dollars in book credits. I had them asking me what we were doing for holidays, streamlining this messaging to the customer. And so our team was like, how about we take these books, figure out how to create a sellable, identifiable Kendra Scott way of doing things, and get these books into the hands of Title I schools so that they can have them. The customers can support this initiative during the holidays because they want to be philanthropic and give back. And that's how we created this concept of Little Yellow Library. So it's essentially a cute little library shelf. It has 200 books on it. They're multicultural and diverse books, specifically because they're the most expensive. And a lot of the Title I schools are 90% of the students, a lot of them don't speak English. And we want to ensure books are getting into the hands of the kids that look like them that are reading them. And so we accomplished this program, and I'm really proud to say that program raised the most it ever has for any program during the holidays, over $90,000. So our customers loved it. And it's a program that we're innovating and consistently building across 75 Title I schools that are waiting right now to receive a Little Yellow Library. But it's that innovative idea of being able to think about how do I do the philanthropy lens and keep the authentic giving model that we are so proud of. How do I think about that like kind of marketing consumer lens, and how do I merge the two together, so that consistent innovative thinking of how to bring a solution together.
I was really fortunate because there was never resistance of we don't need a women above program. You know, that I didn't have to, that's why I really admire the strategy. Everyone knew we needed it. It was more of coming in and delivering something that was sustainable, that was true to who we were, who was already leveraging the great work that we were doing at Northern, which we started a women's program in the early 1900s and had all this history about it. So I was like, oh, well, how do I take that and this amazing history in this and just evolve it? Fair? So the innovation was really about that. But where the challenge came in is, how do we scale? You know, how do you scale this innovation? So it's not just at the center, but how, and that required getting champions. You know, that required really starting with the pilots like I described, but then going out and getting our partners across the country invested in this very important mission. And one of the things that surprised me the most was, you know, while elevating women is really external for our clients, what I learned that was so amazing about the power of innovation, especially when it's mission driven, was it reignited this passion in our partners. We call our employees partners, where they're like, I have purpose, you know? And so that was a really cool thing, but my point is the challenge was, how do I scale? And, okay, why? We need others invested and to be part of this to make this so much bigger than you know, just sitting at the core in Chicago, for example, even though I'm based here. But, so.
Well, thank you all for sharing, and I hope that you can all take away how diverse each one of these women's backgrounds are in their careers, and how innovative they are in those different careers, and the ideas, the different ideas that they bring in, and how they're scaling the organization that they're working in. And so our final question before the audience Q&A, but what is some advice that y'all would give some aspiring entrepreneurs before they set off into their career?
I can jump on first. So I think I love when you come in as a sponge. So don't be the first to jump in and speak in the room because you want to hear your voice or prove yourself. I think accepting that it's okay to come in and absorb and be a sponge and learn and understand every single nuance within the organization, how this group talks to this group, so that then when you are ready to start really coming in and contributing, you've taken the time to understand the culture, you've taken the time to understand how and why they do things before you just jump in and try to change something. That'll go a long way, I think, specifically within the people that have been within the organization for a while, and they'll be, more open to understand, why or what you're saying. So I think it's just that ability to come in and first absorb that information and learn and ask questions. I think a lot of people are afraid to ask questions. They see that as a weakness. I'm always really big to tell people when they started our company, my Teams chat's always on, text me, no question is a bad question. That's how you're gonna learn here and navigate. So that would really be, what I would say is just listen, ask questions, and absorb before you just kind of jump in, try to take all of that first.
Absolutely. And building on what Sheena said, it's important that you earn trust as well as align with your partners. And I think that's a lot of what we spoke about, sort of how you overcome that friction. You get champions and people who recognize your superpowers And I think one of the best ways to do that, and that I've done that throughout my career, is creating a lot of systems that help you understand yourself. One, what are your superpowers? And then two, allow for you to earn trust in those spaces. One of the ways that I did that at Amazon was creating research backlogs that captured all of the research that I did from day one to insights gained from going on ethnographic trips. And from there, I was able to build trust as an authoritative source and knowledge source on my products and almost a product owner. And with that, I developed a backlog that became stronger with time, that people wanted access to that system, but also allowed for them to see innovative opportunities to help better serve our customers. So,
And no one asked you to do that, right?
that's no.
And that is the key to being an entrepreneur, you recognize, sorry. It's such a huge thing to point out.
It's a common theme of what you both have really, all of us talked about, but.
Yeah, absolutely. I think and as Sheena was saying, like being that sponge and being in those meetings, find ways that you can serve the gaps that will allow for you to highlight your superpowers. Like mine is creating systems and funneling ambiguity into clarity, and then find people that will amplify that, because that will help amplify their mission.
Yeah.
I think my advice would be, don't be afraid to rock the boat. Because you will rock the boat, and it will happen, and that's okay. And I think that it can be really easy to diminish the contributions that you might be able to make to whatever organization that you end up working with after you graduate. But owning the spaces where you have a passion for something and you are that sponge and you're continuing to learn, and you have an idea that you want to test and try, and that might not happen right away, that might not happen overnight, but that can happen over time, and even creating the small waves can allow big things to happen within your organization and allow people to see you as an innovator, as a creative, as somebody who is okay with doing things differently, and I think that that is so impactful.
So I have two things, but this was perfect because it kind of dovetails back to what I wanted to share about on the heels of your story. Is everyone in this room is so valuable within these organizations, because research actually shows that it's the younger, more junior folks that are coming into an organization that have the biggest opportunity to innovate. Okay. It isn't, I almost was back in college, because remember I took a 14-year hiatus. So I almost, despite my age, was coming back as just almost one of you, fair? Maybe a little bit longer on it, but still. So despite my age, you follow kind of where I'm going with this. And, I think it's important to, yes, the senior leaders, they also have to be receptive. They have work to do to make sure that innovation happens, but it isn't the other way around. It truly isn't.
Yeah.
You have to be willing to do the work, which was a common theme that you just highlighted. But you also have to be willing to take a chance.
Yeah.
And be willing to say, I see a problem. I'm going to persevere because I know that there's something here. But what you said is really important, because how you do it. If you come in without honoring, you'll get shut down, and the opportunity cost of that is too great. You have a huge opportunity to make an enormous impact on this organization. So I will just share them the second part, or piece of advice is, think big. Like, that's my biggest in life. Like, think big, bet on yourself. And if you're scared, that's good. Because if you're not just a little scared, if you've got an idea, whether you're a founder or an entrepreneur, if you're not scared, you're not thinking big enough.
Yeah.
And people might think you're crazy. Who cares? That's on them.
But you have to have those outlets, and I think also in companies, a lot of them, they have opportunities for you all to try things out. Like my company hosts hackathons all the time.
Oh, very cool.
I've won both of the hackathons. And it's led to more opportunities. Like I'm helping Amazon launch a game right now and some of their facilities, and then I'm also getting I thought big, which is one of our leadership principles. And now some of the work that I got visibility is now getting prioritized and worked
Love it.
on. So
Yeah, we
Also-
have game, oh,
No,
sorry.
go ahead.
We were just gonna say, we have a game-changing thing too. I know, Jessica, how many game-changing submissions in our company did we have? A lot.
There's like, I think your first round was 8 to 9.
Wow.
Think big submissions,
Love it.
and we went ahead and got behind a handful of them, because we empowered people to think big and pitch it and move it forward and get in front of the right people, and now it's happening, like within the company, so it's good.
No, you're good. I know we're also almost out of time, but I just wanted to also say, to Ariel's point, people are watching even if you don't think that they are.
So,
And I think that that's something that we don't talk about enough. But like when you're doing something, whether that is for your benefit or to your detriment, somebody is watching, even if you're a remote employee. And I think that like I work fully remotely. My company is in New York, and I was on a call earlier today, and they're like, "Oh, everybody was talking about you in the office because they know that you're interested in X, Y, and Z, and you're the go-to person for that now." And I was like, I had no idea anybody was paying attention to that one thing I said in a meeting 3 weeks ago, but they were, and they listen. So I also just caution you and encourage you doing the work, taking the initiative, and doing things that, especially when you're not asked to do them, people will take notice of that, and that distinguishes you from your peers.
they might want a little bit too much of your help though.
That's also true. Okay, sorry.
Know how to say no, yes. But I think all of y'all are paving the way, truly, 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 for like, not only the woman here in the center, but also just the next generation of leaders as well. So thank you all so much for being here. And so now we're gonna open it up to the audience if y'all have any questions.
Sheena, can you please share about the Kendra Cares and the Yellow for Pink program? I just would love to hear more.
Yeah, so talking about innovation and programming, one of my favorite things about Kendra Scott is innovating unique programming specifically to how we service through nonprofits. So it's not about writing checks, it's about actually creating programs. And philanthropy is based on time, talent, and treasure. And when Kendra Scott wasn't as profitable as it is now, we created a program called Kendra Cares. If anybody's been in our stores, the color bar is a customizable experience where you can make your own pieces of jewelry. And Kendra was walking the halls of the MD Anderson Cancer Center on the pediatric unit and was like, "All these kids look so sad. Like, I want to get them out of their rooms and get them excited." And so she had this brilliant idea to bring our color bar to children's hospitals. And then it was also an ability to offer our employees a way to serve our purpose and give back to. So that program operates on a monthly and quarterly basis. We're in 42 pediatric hospitals across the country, where pediatric patients and caregivers can come out of their room organization. 1 in 8 women, unfortunately, is diagnosed with breast cancer, but we believe in breast cancer from a 365 approach. So how is the diagnosee plus the family members all affected? So we invest through Yellow for Pink in research, we invest in family counseling and resources, we invest in preventative breast cancer efforts, as well as we do a lot of advocacy as well. So those are 2 programs that we've kind of built from the ground up that have a lot of different things. And our customers love them, they love participating in them and see that those are things that we are proud of and stand for.
Thank you. Cool, thank you. Yeah. What do each of you look for in a company that will specifically cultivate your creativity?
I will say one of the things that I really love about Wagner, and again, remember, I did not have a corporate background. So there was a moment where I was like, I'm leaving my own business. Like, is this really smart? We're a very flat organization. So, and I think that's really helps because it also, as I'm now, 4 years into this and building and growing our team, it's so easy, we're all so accessible. And you mentioned that, to see these, more junior partners coming in and saying, I want to learn about this, I want to get involved. And so that flat organization, at least for me, I'm not saying it's impossible if it's not like that, but I think it has obstacles.
I think it can, I think for me, just because the nature of my job is very creative, I'm a UX designer, so I'm always going to have to think creatively or innovatively about what is needed. My favorite quote is Henry Ford's quote about the Model T car. If you'd ask people what they wanted back in the day, course, but it's your job as a designer to invent the Model T. So I think like it's my job to kind of be very innovative. So, but I do think like in companies, think about that. Think about how your role interacts with what the product is. And also for me with my product, know your threshold for creativity. Like I'm a very creative person, but I don't need to be working on a very traditionally creative product. Like I've worked with the DoD a lot, I've worked on healthcare, and right now I'm doing environmental health and safety. So figure out with how do you find joy, and are you going to be able to find it within the subject matter the company works on?
Thank you.
I also will say for me, I don't know if it's the organization as much as it is the supervisor and your immediate boss, because I think that is the person who will give you a lot of autonomy to be able to pursue creative endeavors if that's something that you're interested in. If you have a boss who is a micromanager, that can be a lot more challenging to find the time to pursue additional products or take on other opportunities. So I think finding a boss who you can work with and communicate with effectively, and being able to be honest with them of the areas that bring you joy and the areas that you want to grow, that you want to learn more. Where you're like, hey, I know that I work in user design, but I want to learn more about software engineering, if that's like the intersection of design and engineering. So can I talk to these people, or can I shadow this team and find ways to be exposed to other opportunities? I think that that is so important.
I am so glad you said that, because I can tell you personally, as I was exploring, do I do this, do I not, the woman, this incredible woman I work with, said, do not lose your entrepreneurial spirit. That is why we're hiring you. I will block and tackle if you get resistance. And so without her not only saying she would do it, but she did it.
Yeah.
I would never have been able to do what I do and to build the team and to have all these amazing people involved in this. It really, that's such an important point, because you can have a flatter, you can have all that, but without the champion there to help you innovate and grow, that is probably the most important thing.
That is so true. And I think if you don't end up getting that in your work, because sometimes unfortunately we don't have that, don't be afraid to pursue that on your own.
Yeah.
Or use the capital that you're getting and reinvest that into yourself, to just, whether you're volunteering locally or with other people who are innovating, to just create your own creativity.
Well, as sad as I am to end this, it is about time. So thank you all so much again.
Thank you.
I know I've said it like twice, but thank you again. And audience, if y'all have any more questions, there's going to be the next half hour is about networking, so you can definitely ask the panelists. We'll do giveaways in a few minutes, and there's food and beverages if you want. Take us some neat pictures. And if you didn't check in with our chef up front.